Welcome to the first series of videos we'll be providing to you. This video will be covering Vray for Rhino. So yeah, let's get started. By now you should already have Vray. If not, go to your local retailer to find the software and get it installed onto your system. Once it's properly installed on your computer, when you launch Vray, when you launch Rhino, the plugin should automatically be attached to Rhino itself. If it is not, then you have to tell Vray to launch itself. But this tutorial is primarily on how to use Vray, its interface, and how to do a render, a quick render, if you will. To make sure your toolbars and your render capabilities are turned on, go to the top of your menu. And you'll see render. Click on render. Go to current renderer, and right now Rhino render will be checked. Simply check on Vray for Rhino. Then go to tools. Go to toolbar layout, and you should have Vray for Rhino V4 or whatever version you may have. Make sure it's in there. If it's not, then it hasn't been properly installed, or you have to tell it to load itself in there. So click on Vray and make sure that Vray for Rhino is checked for toolbars. Okay, and it is checked, so we're good to go. And so this is your toolbar right here. This is what we're going to be using for all of our rendering needs in Vray. You'll see three little price tags, one with the M. M stands for material, O stands for Vray options or settings, and F stands for frame buffer. This is what will pop up when you render, because it's showing you the process in which you will be rendering and how long it's taking, just bits of information that you may need further on down the road when you do more high quality renders. Okay, so I need to go ahead and launch my layers, and I'm going to be showing you a quick render, rendering this bench I designed, I believe last semester. Okay, so we're going to go to options real quick. This is the first thing you need to go ahead and have set up. We're going to be touching a little bit on global switches, output, environment, and indirect illumination. So go to global switches. By default, you will have something that looks like this. Low thread will be unchecked, hidden lights will be checked, and default lights may be checked. What you want to do is go ahead and check the low thread and uncheck hidden lights and default lights. If you uncheck these two, Vray will not render any lights that will be on separate layers and you have turned them off. So this is a good thing. If you have it checked, then it'll render all the lights you have currently set in the model. Chances are you don't want that. So go ahead and just leave that box unchecked. Default lights are either lights that are default by Rhino or by Vray. You want to have that unchecked because you may want to change your own environment within the building, an object, or details in any particular way that you've had set up. So you may not want the default lights that are already set by Vray. Or you may, so it's up to you whether you check it or not. And then check the show GI only, and we're about to hit this part next. So just go ahead and have that box checked. Click on global switches again. Go to output. We'll come back to this in a minute. Go to environment. There's that GI link again. By default, both of these should be checked, the GI and the background. This is important that you have them checked so that when you render, your environment will reflect whatever it is or object that you wish to render. You can go in here and click the different colors and add material. Well, in a sense, M stands for material, but for the environment, if you select that, you probably want to go ahead and have it as a HDRI, high definition resolution image. To get that, go to where it says none under the common section, and you can go to bitmap or to Fresno. Just click on bitmap real quick. You can click on the little M, and it should automatically direct you to your material box, which this did not. So I just have to go find it really quick. It's got to be around here somewhere. Program data. That's what it was. Just go back. Here it is. ASGVIS, materials, and HDRI. And as you can see here, I have a series of options which I can select for my environment. Think of this as your object being placed in one of these, and whatever the light is currently happening in one of these images, you'll get that same effect of that environment applied to your object. You're not going to have like the image applied, or this reflectivity of the image applied to your model. It's just the environment in which the object will be placed. So if you select this one with a sort of orange table with sunlight coming through, if your object were to actually be placed in there, you would actually have that environment with that light environment or reference into your model. But I don't want any HDRI for the moment, so I just set the color to gray. In the background, this is important as well. You can render an object using white, and then or have your background using black. Now, whatever color you choose, please, when rendering, check both to make sure they, make your settings appropriate. Okay, so if you try to render in black, chances are your object render output may be darker as opposed to white. I chose white simply to enhance the overall material and any lighting that may be applied to the object. Okay, so click that out. I'm going to go to indirect illumination. By default, GI should be turned on. If it's not, check it. And I think that's it for this particular demo. Then go to output. Output is the viewport in which your render is currently set. If you look here real quick, this viewport is basically your render output. This is what we're talking about for the camera output. I'm going to close the layer box for the moment. So say I already have my render set. Let's go to 5. So say this is it. I'm going to launch my render options, go to the output, and I'm going to look for the quickest render. We'll do 640 by 480. And then 640 by 480, that's a standard video or image output that you'll see. It's a standard output. Basically, if you try to, when you view YouTube videos, usually they have a ratio of 640 by 480. But I don't have that, as you can tell, because it's a little longer. It's more landscaped. So to get that, get everything within my viewport, select the desired viewport, and then click Get Viewport Aspect, and watch the numbers. They'll go from 640 to 480 down to 368. Okay, so when I try to render, I'll get everything that's within this viewport as planned. Okay, so that's it for render options. I'm going to go to materials, and this is when we're going to talk about how to get a material, change its properties, and apply it to the object. So let's go to my layers. Okay, so for the bench, I have a bench 3D, which is the front part of it. I have the bench legs, which is the back part of it, and the metal anchors. So it's very simple. To get your materials, by default, you may have default _ Vray _ material. This is just a gray material. There's nothing too fancy about it. You can go in here and right click under the scene materials, and you can add a material. These are basic or generic materials set by Vray, or you can go to import new material, and this will should take you directly to the material folder that Vray has set for you. And these are some of the folders that you may have for different materials. I have one that's called Texture Vray because I've already started to edit material, create material for different projects that I had before. So I have all these different options here. And as you become more efficient with the plugin, you'll start to create your own materials as you get into complex renders. So the renders that I'm going to be using are basically the material with anything with the extension of VIS-MAT, Visual Material. For the ones I'll be using for this project, I'm going to be using the birch, Estate Northern Birch, and go to Import New Material. Use Estate Northern Birch 1. Okay. Now, both of these are the same thing. If I hit Update Preview, you'll see the render on that one. But one of them has a different setting. I believe it's Birch 1 that has a lower bump value than the first one. And basically, well, if you know anything about material, every material has a texture to it or a bump to it, kind of like that rough edge. Like if you ran your finger or fingers across a stone surface or a brick surface, you'll notice different grooves and different bumps in it. That's basically the bump of a material. That's how we sort of simulate the reality of the material. So if we look under the material for Northern Birch, you'll see reflection, diffuse, and maps and options. Okay, for options, you can choose to leave it alone, or you can change some of these things. In most cases, I choose just to leave it alone. I go for the maps, which is the bump, and for here, click on that M. Yeah, click on the M. Lowercase m and uppercase m. Lowercase m stands for no material has been applied. Click on me and I will apply something to you that you wish. That's what it's saying. If you click on the uppercase m, if there's an uppercase m already applied next to a particular icon, material, identification, whatnot, that means there's been something already added to it. It's already been edited. For this one, I've already applied a bump image to this particular material. And for that, the bitmap here, it was at none. Just click on the bitmap, and next to it you'll see bitmap section with file, and then a lowercase m for those that don't have the bump. For those that already have it, uppercase M. Click on it, and it'll take you directly to your material. I have everything labeled to where it's easy to find. Estate Northern Birch, which is the material, underscore the type of material, which is a bump, which is right there. Okay, so click that. Here you'll notice the multiplier. The multiplier tells you how intense you want that material to be. It should be set to probably 1.13 or 0.13. I've reduced mine to 0.05 to reduce the amount of bump effect that it has on the material. So if you look right here and to your left, you'll see the sphere with the material applied to it. That's before. I'm going to hit apply over here, and then I'm going to hit the update preview, and we should see a slight difference. And we do. And there's not as much bump as there was before. Correct? If I do it without the bump, uncheck the bump box, and then update preview, it'll render without the bump. See the difference? If you want to render a hardwood floor that's shiny, yes, you probably would not have the bump at all. Now to intensify the reflection or the glossiness, you can come in here and turn down these values. It's recommended that you don't turn it down below 0.5 on both of them, because yes, in reality, if you turn them down, it gets closer to the realistic material. But if you do that, then you intensify the time of rendering for this particular model, and you could have a very complex project and increase the render time by nearly, we'll say 1.5 times or double. So watch out for that. The reflection, again, you can apply material to this as well. For this one, in most cases, under reflection, you want to have the common type to be under fresh now. Okay. Have the settings. It may be set to 3 and the 1.55. I have mine set to 3 and 3. The material itself, click on that. Change your image to bitmap. Multiplier should be at probably at 1.0. I set mine to 1.2. And to get your image into the texture, click on, again, under the bitmap dialog box, click the M, and it'll take you directly to where you to your material folder. For this one, let's go ahead and let's take you over to the large icons so you have a better idea or understanding what this is that I'm selecting. Remember, this is the birch bump, this is the diffuse, and this is a DISP. This is what we're trying to get to, the DISP for this particular material, which is the Fresno. This is essentially the inverted of this in the, I believe, the grayscale mode. So this is the original material that I had, brought it into Photoshop, I turned that into grayscale, I inverted that, and this is what I get. It looks like a negative. Okay. Then I took this image, and again in Photoshop, and I changed some settings to change this into more of a bump. Now if you want to know more about bumps, I will have another video set up for creating a bump in Photoshop, so that's much later. So in most cases, the material has three images: the raw image, the inverted image, and the bump image. Okay. Simply hit OK, apply it to that, and hit update, and you'll see that there. Okay. Then diffuse, think of diffuse as the raw image. Okay. Click on the lowercase m, go from none to bitmap, go to bitmap dialog box, click on the M. As you can see, it says diffuse. So as we've already discussed, it's the raw image. Click that, hit open, and you should already have that inside. Hit update, and you should see the image. This is the raw image. Okay. So with that already applied, I'm going to go in here and finish setting up the rest of my settings so that everything works. Update that preview. Okay. So I have a bump there, and it's going in a 90 degree, and I have another one that's going with a slight bump, and this one is also going 90 degree. I've also noticed that I don't necessarily want both materials to go in the same direction, because the birch one is from already planned to be my back legs of the bench, and the estate northern birch is just for the front part of the bench. So what I want to do is go back to northern birch 1 and go into my bump and go to where it says rotation, and I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees. Before I do that, let's hit the 0 and see what happens when I hit update. Nothing yet. Okay, let's go 90 and just hit OK. Let's go and hit preview now. The bump will have changed its direction. You see how it changed already? But it doesn't reflect my image. So if I change the bump, that means I have to go into the diffuse and change the rotation of the image to 90 degrees and change the reflection M to also 90 degrees so that everything lines up. Now hit update preview. And there it is. So now the material, the raw image, and the bump match up. So it's actually correct. And everything else is set to go. Now to apply material to an object, there are two good ways you can do that. You can select the object that you already have. Say you only want a desired set of objects to have one particular material, but all of these particular objects may be on one layer. So you can select the objects, go back to the material editor, and go to one of the materials you want, highlight it, right click, and then apply material to objects, because you selected the objects, so you simply want to apply the material to that object. That's fine if you want to do that. I like to have everything already set to layers. Again, layers are very important here. And then apply the material to that layer so I know it's going to work 100%. Okay, so I'm going to select the estate northern birch, right click, apply material to layers, and let's do this real quick so you can see it. Okay, I have the 3 layers: bench 3D, bench back legs, and metal anchors. So estate northern birch will be applied to bench 3D. So check it, hit OK. Estate northern birch 1 will be applied to the bench back legs. Click it, OK. And if you notice over in your layer dialog box, you'll notice that every time I hit a property of the material and I apply it to the layer, it'll update itself in the layers. So you can see what's going on. There it is. And the titanium has already been applied, so we're good to go. So close that out. Okay, and then I believe I'm good to go on the layer, so I'm going to close out my layer property box. Go back to my perspective and change my viewport to my desired view. Hit save. Make sure you save everything and save it often. And then hit this little shaded box, which is render, and render it. Okay. So as this is rendering, if you notice there's a little box behind there, which is basically showing you the progress of the render output. It usually has a pre-pass of 4, depending on how fast your computer is. Some may run faster than others. If you have too many lights, maybe you have too many reflective objects, or if you have glass, this will be very slow at rendering. Glass is the most difficult thing to render, and I recommend rendering glass at, say, the most minimum basic, with a slight reflection to it. Keep it to a minimum because you can always bring it into Photoshop and enhance it with the real glass. So that'll make your model look that much better. Already we are in the 4:4 pre-pass, which is really good. Then again, there's not much here except for a series of ribs connected to its back legs. So I guess we'll wait until it's finished rendering. Again, this is still rendering at 640 by 368, which is currently set to my viewport, and you can already tell it basically mimics what I had on my viewport. Another thing that you may want to know is there are a few settings in here that you can change the different output. Basically, these are the channels, the RGB. If you know Photoshop, you can go through and you can manipulate those channels if you wanted to. You have a save icon. You have a clear image if you don't want that render, and you can do a track mouse while rendering. I wouldn't recommend you doing this because it's just going to make your computer run that much slower. So just keep everything the way it is. Wait for the render to go through. The ground is a little bit dark. Obviously there's some issues with this, but you get the gist of it, and the render and the quality. It already looks fairly decent. Again, I would take this into Photoshop and do post-production, which is normal. It's not a big deal, but you can tell it looks pretty good as it continues to finish the last bit of information. 2, 3, okay. Then come up to this save icon image, save it to a place you could find it easily, and then give it a name. Okay. Then decide what you want to save this file type as. I recommend using PNG. You can use JPEG, but PNG eliminates the background. Sometimes you just have backgrounds you just don't want to show up. So click PNG, and it has a higher quality pixel ratio than JPEG does. The PNG will be a higher, will have a larger file output, just to warn you about that one. And then hit save. And that's it. Close this out, close that out. I'm done with this. And there it is. We open it, and there's a render. Okay? And then you take it into Photoshop and you do post-production. Okay, so this concludes the tutorial for Vray for Rhino. If you have further questions, email us. And